Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of LinkedIn Live's Being a Woman in with Lead 50/50. Me, Hella Tyler. And this week we've got a really special guest, Sabrina Sharma. Now, Sabrina has long been on our radar as a really interesting and inspirational woman. Lives in Fiji, works for human rights. She's a lawyer and she's going to tell us all about this. And we've been desperate to meet her, and is also this year's winner of the Lead 50/50 Champion of Change Award. So Sabrina is going to talk to us about what it's like to be a woman in Fiji. So Sabrina, without further ado, I hand over to you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Ella, for your lovely introduction. Thank you to the Lead 50/50 team for all the phenomenal work that you do and for your kind invitation today. Well, my name is Sabrina Sharma. I'm a human rights lawyer. I was first admitted to the Supreme Court of Victoria in Australia as a legal practitioner in 2007. I then went on to become admitted to the High Court of Fiji as a barrister and solicitor in 2017. That's November 2017. Now, working as a barrister in Fiji exposed me to a lot of the community concerns that were ongoing over the last few years. These include poverty concerns, women empowerment concerns, a voice for women that needed to be heard, really, the plight of women in rural areas and so forth. So my work essentially moved from being a human rights lawyer to then creating programs and trying to find ways to empower the women across Fiji, and these included things like office training programs that I'd conducted through my own office, which taught women to basic skills like reception work and clerical skills, deportment and etiquette, how to appear professional to customers and clientele, and the like. It then moved on to, and I didn't plan for this to happen, but it just sort of went that way. I ended up founding the Fiji Rural Women Empowerment Network, which seeks to empower women across rural areas of Fiji, but more so provide platforms not only for education online, but also to look within, to look at our worth and how we can contribute as women to the communities that we are a part of. So that happened.
Can I just ask, actually, sorry to sound ignorant, but could you tell me a little bit about Fiji? I mean, how big is it? What's the population? What the kind of, what's the religion and the political makeup? How I don't really, I have actually been to Fiji, but I don't know a lot about Sabrina.
I think that's the common answer I get from people who talk to me about Fiji, and they will say things like, "Oh, I've been there. I've been to this hotel. Have you heard of it?" Or I know one word, bula, things like that. So that's all great. It shows cultural appreciation and sensitivity. Fiji is, it's a growing nation. There are roughly 900,000. Well, the current figures, 2020 figures, I think said 896,444, but I think we're a little past that. It is a country located in the South Pacific. It consists of, I believe, more than 250 to 300 islands. And it's just, beautiful. The landscapes are beautiful, coconut trees and vast oceans, coral reefs and clear lagoons. The two main islands are Viti Levu and Vanua Levu. They contain most of the population. And the capital is Suva, which is a port city with British colonial architecture. The architecture is beautiful. We do have a president, I won't touch too much on the political climate for brevity of time. However, the religions there predominantly consist of the leading faith is the Christian faith.
Right. Okay.
And there are varying denominations. You've got the Methodists, the Catholics, the Pentecostals, and the Baptists. And then next in line, I believe, are the Hindus and the Muslims. So you'll see a very minority of Buddhists, but the prominent faith there is Christianity. The people are, I think, the political way to correctly refer to Indians from Fiji is to call them Indo-Fijians, because they're not Indian and they're not Fijian if we're referring to ethnicity. However, what constitutes a Fijian in Fiji could be a person who looks like you, could be a person who looks like me, could be a person who looks, different. Yes, that's the legal definition of a Fijian. Yes, ethnicity-wise, we have the two main. You've got the Indian backgrounds, you've got the native, indigenous backgrounds. And each have some real beautiful things to bring to the table when it comes to a cultural dialogue, or so I've found. Yes, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And what proportion of the population is native, and what proportion is Indian?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of both. Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. In my exposure, I would see it is a bit of both. Mind you, my exposure is limited to Viti Levu, which is one of the main islands.
Yeah.
I spent most of my time traveling across Viti Levu for my work.
Is that where all your family are from?
My family background, my father's background is more Pakistani Egyptian.
Right.
My mother's background is more Northwest India and Iran.
Yes.
And their grandparents were brought across to Fiji. And my parents were born and raised in Fiji. My father and both my parents went to England in the 70s when ABBA was around. And
best decade ever, my decade.
Oh yes, I know. Tell me about it. So I was born at that time. And
so you were born in the UK. You were born in the UK.
Yes, Hampstead, London.
Right. Okay, Londoner.
Yes. And we returned to Fiji about 3 to 4 years after my birth. And after that we migrated across to Australia, and my father continued his a legal career and journey in Australia before returning back to Fiji. So you could call me a bit of a fruit salad. I've got some amazing cultural influences there. We've got some great conversations that happen in our family.
And yet there seems to be, from what you said, a pull of Fiji. It always being pulled back to Fiji. Am I right?
Yes. I actually, I've lived in Australia. I've spent most of my childhood and growing up in Australia. I've worked in Australia. I then went and worked in the Middle East for Etihad Airways, the national airline for the United Arab Emirates, as a quality assurance legal compliance officer. And came back to Australia and then went to Fiji. So I wanted to sort of see what, how life would pan out in Fiji. And it's been an amazing journey for me. It's changed me as a person. Yeah. It's changed my life. It's changed my outlook on a lot of things. It's matured me a lot as a person inside.
Okay, why is that then? How did Fiji do that to you?
Okay, well, how Fiji did that to me is some of you may know I am a survivor of domestic violence, and I suffered this while I was in Australia during my stay in Australia. I won't go into the time periods and things. But what happened was I was raising a child. I was not really talking about what I had endured, what it had done to me as a person until Fiji happened. So when I got to Fiji and I began representing various clients in court, human rights cases, there were women who were survivors of domestic violence. I began to see the trauma, the depression, the anxiety, things that they were going through, which I could identify with.
Right.
And also see that platforms weren't really available to these women to help them find coping strategies or mechanisms where they would be allowed to seek certain types of counseling or explore awareness of domestic violence. There's a real stigma, taboo about talking about your life experiences pertaining to things like domestic violence or domestic abuse, as it may be known in the UK. So things like this.
In Fiji, it's particularly in Fiji, there's a real stigma.
Yes.
There's a shame.
Yes. Yeah. Look, there's a shame if you come out and talk about any of this. There's a cultural sensitivity there in that there's an expectation that women are not supposed to speak out about this sort of thing. You just supposed to endure it and grow up quietly about it. And when I got to Fiji and I got to see women going through these things, it yes, it disturbed me, but it also moved me to want to be a voice for them. So I started speaking out about my experiences as a survivor of domestic violence, as a survivor of rape from being a young child. And I found it liberating to speak about my ordeal because, finally, I was addressing the elephant in the room when we'd be sitting and having conversations about this. And secondly, there were women whom I was speaking to and addressing as guest speaker at events and in training programs who would have all sorts of questions, such as, how do you know about this, or what do you understand about trauma bonding? How can you say this? Have you been there? Things like that. So I was able to accurately answer them from a place of having endured those things and to show them that if I can overcome these things, so can you. And that's what Fiji did for me.
But that's amazing, Sabrina. And what that strikes me is you said that it was something that was not to be talked about within that community. And I think lots of people can relate to that across the world. Certainly, there's still shame attached, in most countries, the UK for sure. So it strikes me that it was very brave of you to take that stance and to stand up and say that had happened to you and to act as a model and an inspiration to these women. Did you get any kickback? Was there people who didn't like what you were doing?
I believe there were a lot of people who didn't like my speaking out. And the way I see it is there'll always be people who don't like things that we do, but at the end of the day, we're not bars of chocolate. We can't impress everybody. At the end of the day, we've got to do what we feel is right, because consistent with the law, and taking into consideration that often when we do share perception and often when we do share life experiences and the ordeals we've gone through, there will always be somebody who's going to be offended by our sharing. But at the end of the day, that is their journey of learning, of growth, and it's something we as sharers and change makers can also appreciate, that the listener or the recipient of my sharing is someone who is on their own journey, who may benefit from what I share, may perhaps not immediately, but perhaps later down the track. But to understand that whatever we share, there is a greater good involved. and it is to create awareness. It is to hopefully contribute towards positive change in our community and to empower other women to speak out and come out about whatever it is that you're experiencing, and just to have a chat about it.
To take, yeah, and to lighten the load on them. They must feel, wow, finally someone is speaking. It's not just me, you know, I'm not alone. Someone else can,
Exactly.
As they say, very fashionably, you know, they see me, you know, I feel seen.
Yes. Yes, and that's what it did for me. And there were numerous other women who ended up reaching out to talk about this. Look, there was, it's just come to my mind, there was an incident which sparked this whole thing. Was one afternoon I was in my father's firm, and there was a loud piercing scream that I heard in the back alley. And so I ran down towards the scream, and there were about 25 to 30 men who had surrounded a woman who was brutally being punched and kicked by a man who was a former spouse of hers, who could not adjust to the idea that she wanted out. She did not want to be in the relationship or continue on. And he was severely beating her up. Nobody was reaching out to help her. And I wedged myself in between him and her. He was huge. This man was huge. And I just knew that that was the right thing to do at the time, and try to talk him down. And because I am driven by faith, I called, and because I could identify that the victim and the male perpetrator were also of the Christian faith, I spoke to them in a language that they could understand, and it was about Jesus. And I said, you need to stop, because this is not something that Jesus would condone. No. So it stopped the behavior, and he actually ended up running from me. So I was able to get that woman to safety, and within a week, that incident made it to the press, not just once but twice. The nation was moved by the fact that there had been a domestic violence unfortunate circumstance, and that someone had intervened to stop it. And I think that was a real catalyst, because a lot of people began talking. There was a huge social media hype about reaching out and stepping up and doing the right thing, and all of that. And suddenly there was a break in, oh, we've got to be silent about this, to, oh, hey, we've got to stick up for people out there who are enduring this heinous crime.
You really are a champion of change. I mean, goodness me, you deserve that award more than anyone. And did you, I love that feeling that you kind of related to him, both of those people, on a spiritual level. You thought that was the angle to go down, and that really touched them, and it worked. That's incredible.
Yes, it worked. Well, that's the only thing I had, because he was humongous. I couldn't take him on. And the men around me, they weren't helping. One chap was actually videoing the whole thing, like it was entertainment or something. It was horrific. So
How long ago was this? How long ago was this?
This was in January 2018.
Wow. And it was that what kind of propelled you to have this female Fiji Women Empowerment Network, to set that up?
No, that came a lot later, when I began to see that women in rural areas did not readily have access to platforms to embrace life skills, to further education and things like that. And a lot of the platforms that were being provided are offered to women who live in larger cities and towns, and most of their courses require to have prerequisites and things like that. So the courses I looked at offering for the rural women mandated that they would not need to have any prerequisites. Even if they didn't graduate school, you could still study things like accounting principles, which they studied last month. I think this month we've got fashion design. And a couple of months ago, we looked at empowering ourselves, how to get past depression. We have French language classes. We've looked at Japanese language classes. So
Wonderful.
I've been teaching those things online.
Amazing. You actually teach them yourself?
The French and Japanese, yes. With things like accounting and fashion design, the online courses, that's actually conducted through the Oxford Home College over in the UK. So what we do, help the women register the courses online or register their enrollments, and then they will study the courses based on their time and whenever they're free. It's self-paced. And once they complete it, they're given certificates of completion, which is fantastic.
That's amazing. And so are women seen, you're giving them all these courses. That's just an amazing, I can see is amazing work that you're doing. In Fiji, are women allowed to be leaders? What's the kind of social norms over there? Even because even if you train them up on these things, if they're not allowed to be by the structure that's in place, there's no moving forward. So tell me a bit about that.
Well, it's not so much that they're disallowed. From what I see, it's the fact that there aren't enough opportunities and platforms for them. So, I mean, I say that with reference to women leaders in Fiji, although there are women leaders in Fiji, we've had a few in Parliament. I've identified 3 female magistrates who preside over the bench in courts across Fiji. In my time there, I believe that women are seen as leaders in Fiji. However, men are considered leaders over women. So there needs to be, I think, many more opportunities for women in place, many more platforms to be created where women can actually step up, be recognized, and have their voices acknowledged, not just for themselves, but for other women, and be taken as somebody who can contribute to positive change and empowerment and be accepted as such. So when it comes down to these women studying perhaps online courses, they would be able to, subject to the criteria in the course, be able to use these courses to gain employment or to gain entry into another area of study that they like. Now, it's just a matter of pushing and pushing and pushing to have that voice heard, because from what I see, it's not something that a rural woman from one of the rural villages will have acknowledged in the first go. She'll have to keep trying. From my experience and what I see over there, it's a real push and shove at times. Yeah, it's not. I don't see a lot of gender equality there for that reason, and I think a lot more needs to be done. Look, having said that, and pertaining to gender equality, Fiji has enacted laws to protect women from things like domestic violence, having a right to education. I mean, Fiji has ratified numerous conventions of the United Nations in this respect. However, the implementation of those laws are very slow. And what I mean by that is, in practice, we don't readily see that happen. I have observed members of the community who are in authoritative positions, for example, they don't take breaches of domestic violence very seriously. And it's not that they don't appreciate what the legislative framework is trying to do here. I believe it boils down to cultural connotations and a lack of educational awareness in this area, because some just don't understand what a breach of domestic violence entails and how this impacts someone, because culturally, women have been tolerating this sort of behavior for a very long time without speaking out. And in that respect, I believe it's very important to engage in dialogue for this reason, because dialogue will allow parties to come together without judgment, to share differing cultural perspectives, and to look at how we each understand the impacts of domestic violence, to explore ways to break out of the norms which stipulate that women traditionally belong in the home as homemakers and men are traditionally breadwinners and so forth. I think dialogue is very important in that respect, which will assist women to engage in a platform where they will be recognized in things like career pathways, as active decision makers in the family, and women who have a right to share their domestic violence experiences.
Which is why it's so amazing that you've been standing up and modeling to inspire women to do it.
Yes, I've tried to. I think, the more we talk about it, the more people are going to start to wake up and say, okay, this is a very real issue here, or this is a real concern here. Maybe there's something here that we really need to start looking into. And I hope that a lot of the communities in Fiji get to that stage.
Wow. Well, you're an amazing person, Sabrina. I'm really so impressed by what you've achieved in your life. Tell me, what kind of motivates you?
God. God motivates me. I am, as I mentioned before, I am faith driven. And one of my favorite verses in scripture is a verse from the book of Proverbs 31, verse 8-9, which says, speak up for the oppressed. Right. So I began to appreciate that when I started working in Fiji and started to see a lot of these human rights concerns that were going on there. And I just could not remain silent. It was not in me. And I think it's for that reason that although I don't like some of my life experiences to do with rape and domestic violence, on the other hand, I'm grateful for all my experiences because they contributed towards who I am today, to fulfill my life's purpose, which according to the big man upstairs is still ongoing, and to be able to make positive changes and contributions towards others and in the lives of others who need it, who are lost, who need to be shown a direction and a path. And I've made it my mission to help them find it.
Oh, Sabrina, I can't believe, you're so inspirational. It's amazing to hear you speak like that from the heart as well. And I imagine when you, in your darkest moments, when you were going through all that, you didn't for 1 minute think that this was actually, part of your life path, and it was actually going to be you were going to get some positive out of it. And I think people listening to this, that will really help a lot of people, you saying that, Sabrina.
Well, thank you, Ella, for your encouragement. You are correct. And I think it's human nature. When you're going through the storm, you'll just be focused on the problem and the storm. But as faith taught me later in life, I did not turn to God and tell God about my problems. I told my problems about my God. And that's what changed it for me. I mean, we're going to continue to have problems in our lives. We're going to continue to have challenges. And I like to refer to them as challenges because it attaches with it an attitude of overcoming. Yes. We can always overcome the things that we face, perhaps not straight away, but in time to come, we will. I have done that with the help of God. Otherwise, I'd be an absolute mess. I have often referred to him for direction in prayer. And it is through his guidance that I ended up in Fiji to do the work that he wanted me to do, which I had absolutely no idea about. It's not like I received an email from the heavens, saying, "Dear Sabrina," but that's which would have been ideal. But I can see how things turned out and how I was able to draw on my life experiences to make the changes and try to reach out to as many people as I could and can. So I'll be continuing to do just that. Wow.
Well, you are an amazing woman, Sabrina. Thank you so much for giving up your precious time. I know it's very late where you are. It's not, it's quite early here, but it's such inspiration to speak to you. And I know that many of our members will draw a lot of inspiration from hearing you speak. So thank you so much. And definitely we were going to be staying in touch, Sabrina.
Thank you for the opportunity, Ella, and thank you, Lead 50/50, again for all the phenomenal work that you do and for the platforms that you provide for women across the globe.
Thank you.